Hello, everybody. John Liebman here. Welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. We're talking with Jack Casady. You know, when I think back in that period, San Francisco, late 60s, Haight-Ashbury, and then eventually Summer of Love, and that whole movement, what was it really like being right in the middle of all of that? What are some misconceptions that people might have about what it was not like? I mean, you were there. You were not only there, but you were part of it, making it happen. What insights can you share with us? What was that experience like?
Well, first of all, it was very small. San Francisco, culturally, is a small town. It's very, very diverse, but then this scene that was going on was contained within the city pretty much, and so. In the late 60s, with advertising, Life magazine articles, and all that kind of stuff, it became to be a place to go to. But then it was in the mid 60s, 65, 66, and even 67. It was still pretty well contained in the local area of San Francisco. I mean, even Berkeley was different, that Berkeley was political and radical and all of that, always has been, but in San Francisco, the music and the bands that made the music, in the beginning it was a small environment, and people have heard about it, but it wasn't a nationwide phenomenon by any means, and I think that's what was enjoyable about the various artists or people that had college-age, middle-class, white America that had just a few years before grown up in a post-Second World War conservative world, were sort of itching to get to find something else. And I think quite a few people who had talent went into different areas. The people who could draw, the photographers, people who could draw would go into poster art. Later on, developed into visual arts, photography, writers. A lot of writers, of course, were their precursor was the Beat generation that coming out of North Beach and all the poets and the writers that came out of there in the late 50s and mid-late 50s, the Jack Kerouacs and all that. Later on, Neil Casady and a number of other people that came up through that avenue of art. Well, the musical avenue, there's always been a scene in San Francisco. There's always been jazz scene or folk music, and this sort of developed into something where instead of people coming in and playing traditional folk music or even traditional jazz to a certain extent, you had people coming in writing new music and writing new lyrics in music that reflected the present times that they're in. And of course, that's what folk music does anyway. So you had people that were looking around them and seeing the world that they actually lived in, and then starting to write words and lyrics about that particular time of the mid to late 60s.
I remember hearing George Harrison describe it once when he was all excited about taking a trip there, and he says, I was expecting this brilliant place, and I got there and it was full of horrible, spotty, dropout kids on drugs. What was that all about?
You're asking me?
Well, I mean, what was he referring to? It doesn't.
You're talking about somebody who an English person who lives in England. I mean, don't forget, they lost America.
but his description didn't sound like.
I mean, you're talking. I haven't the slightest idea. I know what he was talking about. And there again is another case of people writing and talking about things in an inaccurate manner. I think that builds things up. I think culturally, you could walk down King's Road in London as an American, and I did, and I found it fairly much the same too. It was, there was the fashion aspect of it, and the people dressing up and all of that kind of stuff. Over here on this side, the fashion aspect wasn't so prominent. But it had its own aspect to it. But I think when he finally came over and all of that, there was also a lot of people that were coming there just like in the same context. I don't think it was as accessible to everybody at once. That was part of the nature of what it was in San Francisco, is that it was a fairly contained and small environment. And of course, when it got mushroomed out, then there's thousands of people walking the streets from other places looking for whatever it is.
It's an interesting perspective. I never thought about it that way. I'm John Liebman. This is for BassPlayersOnly.com.